Hi guys, I'm Trish and this is Q&A's number 1. Today I'm going to talk to you about a number of emails that I would like to answer. There's comments on my YouTube channel, I've had questions on Instagram as well as on Facebook. At the end of this video, of course, you might have your own questions, so fire me some comments in the bits below, as well as send me any questions over my email. It's trishbits@live.com, and contact me through the various social medias that are out there, and I'll try and answer them on the Q&A's number 2. So there'll be no particular order that I go through this. I'll pick up this first one, and I've got a guy called Stephen Jones. Stephen Jones says, do you sell the balls and diff washers separately, or do you have to purchase the complete diff? Okay, so no, you don't. You can buy a complete diff and it will be ready to go, but you can buy balls and plates, much cheaper option. You can always clean up your old plates and get new balls, but U6792 is the plates and balls, which is a handy packet to have because you'll get your diff going. Generally the thrust washers and for the thrust race assembly and the balls, they stay great for age. And then also it's a question of running diffs in. There's loads of diff running in videos on YouTube. I've had a little watch of them and everyone's got their techniques. If you've got practice available on the track, it's always good if what I like to do is you bed it in on the track. You'll set it to a setting that you've learnt about, like on the video. Right, that's good. And your slip is set nicely so the slip is not so tight that your diff always slips anyway. Go out there, give your car a run, just be gentle with it for 5 minutes, do a practice run. Come back in, have a feel. Basically the grease kind of separates off, it kind of works out. Like I said on the ball diff video, it kind of it self-regulates, that's the one. And so it feels a little bit freer, but you'll find out if it's got any looser after it's run its tracks on the diff plates, but your diff plates shouldn't be that soft at that happens, so it should be good. So basically running in, I like to do it on the track if we've got a practice and just bed them in there. If you have got a run, yeah, fine, hold on to a wheel for what, like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, just kind of run, like get on the point that you're just getting a tiny bit of throttle on. Your tire's not going to burn your hands if you touch it, but it's just going enough that you can feel that, yeah, it's putting a little bit low through the diff. And then grab the other wheel, make it go the other way, just so the differential goes through the differential state, and that should be enough. You don't have to go overboard. I hear people are doing half an hour, all these different things. No, just do literally a 5-minute thing on the track, or if you're doing it off the track and you've got your warm-up laps as well, just literally do 30 seconds to a minute of each side. Something around that would be fine. So that was Stephen Jones. Then there's a guy called Astro Slayer. I've not ever heard of anyone called that, but I think that's their YouTube name. Maybe they slay on the Astro. And also Ben Lloyd has asked the same question. It says just one question. That's from Astro Slayer. Ben's question was similar. Do you use the -5 chassis and why? Yes, I do. The -5 chassis is shorter by -5 millimeters, and basically the closer your front and rear wheels are together, you'll get a smaller turning circle. So what you'll find is you get generally more steering, the sacrifice of stability. So you'll find that a car can be a little bit more twitchy, but you can't place it as well. The biggest thing that we found on carpet was when we go into the corner, go into the middle, steering is good, and come out, the car would sometimes wash out. A -5 chassis would allow the car to finish off the turn a lot better, and that's what we found from that. Some people have said to me, oh, I get more drive from it and all these different things. Fine, you might do that, might be what you find. But the weight transfer is split across the shorter area, so the car is going to feel a little bit more tippy front to rear. So that might be why you feel certain things, so a bit more steering or a bit more drive because of certain reasons. So that's what you'll be finding out when you run it. But I generally run it to make sure I get the end of my corner sorted. Clifford Low. Is laydown similar to the KC for setting up in terms of steering and suspension? Okay, so the front, it's very much the same. It's pretty much identical. We haven't changed the front end of this car for a while, so those that have got one will learn that, yeah, it's very similar. Though with the laydown, we actually put a bit more steering on the front due to the rear end having a bit more grip because of the different geometry on the back. So that's where the suspension on the back of the car is different. The arms are at different lengths, they pick things up at different points, slightly different tower geometry to go with it. So, and also drive shaft relationships have changed. So what you'll find, just looking at, I don't know, I'm looking at the paper, it's down there by my side. What you'll find is that the rear end of the laydown will be a little bit more locked in. So you need to find like narrower hexes, narrower hexes, to what you would normally run on a KC, and that allows the rear hubs to kind of move under roll. Otherwise, if it's too wide, it just creates too much stiffening. So generally on carpet we run zeros, 0.5 to 0, which 1.5 is your kit, and you can go down to 0, and that will give you more power steering. Whereas if you want forward drive, you can go to 3mm hexes. But if you've got dirt tyres on, you can't. 1.5 is generally the widest you can go. But that's a setup thing to talk about. Shadow Summer, okay, if that's how you say your YouTube name as well. What is the Trishbits icon? I can't tell what it is supposed to be. Basically, it's a set of verniers. And amongst the teeth, we have the Trishbits written under there. And Jimmy Oopel, or Jimmy Story, one of my friends, he unfortunately passed away a number of years ago. A very nice person, was kind enough to make me absolutely brilliant logo, and I'll always remember him for that. So thank you very much, Jimmy, if you are listening up there. Next question is Capt Casper 7. That's a mighty name. Maybe he likes Casper, the ghost. Who knows? Definitely run the rear pin low on carpet? Question mark? Not all the time. If you've got a low grip surface and you have too much steering on exit, or it's a bit twitchy getting on power, run the pin high, the kit setting. Take the shim out generally when you want more steering. Some people like to run it all the time. Fine. You might like steering all the time. Some of us like to come out the corners, get on the power, or the power. If you're stick drivers, you're doing that. If you're steer wheel drivers, you're giving it a squeeze. And basically, the high pin will just give you that drive that you're after. Mark Appley, can I run KC position 4 on EOS carpet? Will I see massive benefits in position 2? So on our KC, the Cougar KC, the 2-wheel drive platform, we have 4 motor positions, and with position 1 is really far forward, and position 4 is towards the back, towards where the lay down is. Lay down is around 8mm further back than the KC. What you'll find is when you run position 2, we've always found that on high speed tracks, especially, obviously we talk about carpet now, we found that the car would carry the speed into the corners really, really well. Being that the motor's in the middle, just like on touring cars. This is that we've experienced before. We had MI5 with mid-motor many years ago. We just didn't quite take off back then, but now it's all the rage. Position 2 is very, very similar in that way, but there is a sacrifice of forward traction and various things, so it will wear your tyres down a bit more, and that's where you'd have to change the setup of the car to suit. Position 4, yes, you can get it working, but you have to work a bit harder on setup of this, because the motor's that little bit further forward and you get a stalling action from the motor, because it's effectively this kind of like gyroscopic unit spinning around. When you put it at certain points of the car, it's going to want to stop it turning. So what we was found was position 4 kind of forced the turn, whereas when we moved it a little bit further back where it is on the laydown, the car actually now starts to work. And it's a really critical point where you put that motor, and people don't realise. We have our position 3 again on AstroTurf. That was always very, very good, but in certain instances the car would push on power, or it would be too twitchy in other instances, and that's the imbalance of those gyroscopic forces from the motor reacting at a certain point of the polar moment of the car. Brenton Foggo asking about retract on the shocks. Is basically, he messaged me a longer message about that. So basically I talked about when you bleed the shocks, you do double bleed and you push it up all the way, oil comes out. What will happen naturally, because you've created a cavity inside which is filled up when the shock rod is in, when you pull it out, it's going to want to put itself back in. But that's because you've just built it. If you give your shock a pump a bunch of times, let's say 10 times, you get the suction of the air bubbles going through the O-ring, and you get your aerated shock, and then it should be good. So you shouldn't get any retract, and you shouldn't get any literally push back out, so you get your rebound. So you will get a little bit coming in, and you probably will be getting a little bit coming out, but it's hard to get the perfect. Unless you had like a real car shock absorber on performance cars, or I think motorbikes and stuff like that, where you have a reservoir and the oil can compensate as the piston and shaft come in. But with these tiny model cars, it's always tricky to get this. Last one on this sheet is Pete Lyons. Why is plastic so important? It's a good question. A lot of people hear about that you got carbon wishbones, we have normal stiff wishbones and medium wishbones, and there's graphite arms and all these different things. Plastic becomes important for performance as well as durability. Performance wise is through stiffness as well as weight. Graphite wishbones or carbon wishbones that we use are a lot lighter, but they're not as strong. Whereas a medium wishbone, it's got much vast amounts of nylon mixed in with it, so it's much softer. Whereas a normal wishbone, it's got like more glass in there, so it's a bit stiffer, but strong and stiff, just without the lightweight nature. So it's hard to achieve all of the things that you want. So that's where a design of the wishbone comes in. That needs to be good enough that when you have your softest plastic, it's not overly soft, and when you have your hardest one, it's not just going to go and snap straight away. It's really important to try and get that quality there. We've worked very hard over the years to try and keep our plastics quality up, looking at plastics that we should be using in the right places. Otherwise you end up having a car that might be breaking every time you touch a corn, and you think, oh, I barely touched it and it broke. And that's where you've got to work hard on that. So that's everything on that list. And there's that one. Right. I have a message from Kevin White. Loving the videos. Thank you very much. He's a club racer, and so likes to come and play from time to time. He also races indoors on Astro. You talked about the fact about tyres. So as the rear tyres wear after quali, after the first race, you feel that they're starting to go off. What can you do to the settings to get a bit more from the tyres? He mentioned about other guys, they tend to increase the rear toe-in, so it gives them better performance from the rear tyres for the last 2 races. Okay, fine. Obviously, if money is an object, you'd be throwing tyres at it, is what he said, but he's trying to fix that because obviously we want to save a bit of cash. So what we've always found is that you can introduce more grip to the car even when the tyres are coming down, but that's always at a sacrifice of something. I mean, generally your lap time will come down a little bit. Tyres are optimised generally when you first put them down, they're really good, whereas some of the clay tyres, as you use them, they get better because they run in. It's a tricky subject. So looking at run 1, new tyres, feels alright, feels great. Second run, still alright. Third run, starts feeling a little bit loose. So we can do so many things. Imagine if it was low grip, what would we do? We'd probably angle the rear camber link a bit more, lock that rear end a bit more, stop it rolling around, widen the rear hex, we can shorten the wheelbase only a little bit, stand up the rear shock a little bit, that make the car drive forwards again, thicken the diff oil, stop those wheels spinning up so easily coming out of the corner. Again, you'll lose a little bit of steering through doing all these little changes. You might gain a little bit of steering in a certain area of the corner, but that's generally that. And that's the stuff that you can do. You can even take a little bit off the front, make the front end a little bit less aggressive by moving your front hub forwards or raising your front, your front hub, move your yoke forwards and raise up your front hub. And the last question is from Mark Christopher. Hello, Mark. He said, when you're setting up a car or helping a fellow racer, with so many adjustments, how do you decide which to make first? I think, yeah, it's always tricky. Someone will come over to you asking a question to say, oh, I need more steering. And I'll be like, well, yeah, well, let's look at that. But it might be a case that they don't need more steering. It might be that they're just driving too hard, they're overpowered, so you turn the power down. I get people coming and asking me questions of, what does a longer link do? And I'm like, well, it depends what situation we're under. It will provide different things. It might be offering more side grip. It might, if it's done on the front, based on if it's inboard or outboard, it'd be given a different effect. So I'm like, well, what's wrong? Where is it on the track that you're struggling? Into you just have to isolate the problem. It's like going through the different tiers of working out, right, is it steering? Is it the front or the rear? That's a good question, right? Is the rear too locked in and that's why I don't get the steering? Or is the front end too aggressive and that's why I haven't got any rear end? Opposed to adding to the rear, we take from the front, or we leave the front because in all the corners it looks really nice. It's just the rear fishtail sometimes coming out corners. Then you raise up your rear hinge pin, for example, and go from there. So that's something that I'm always facing, and you're always going to be looking at. There's never a clear answer. You've just got to isolate and listen to the driver, hope he's being really honest, try and watch the car and just look at how they're driving and try and suit their needs. you're never going to win. You're always going to work on it, but you can generally improve things for people when you talk to them and find out how it's going. Anyway, I just want to say thank you for watching. Leave some comments below of any questions, and I'll see you on the next video. Hope you enjoyed Q&As. See you next time. Bye.